The progressive left wants the equity thing, that means favorable status for African Americans and other marginalized groups. They want to attach money to that. It's a little complicated. Now, in the past, former President Obama has been against reparations because he said it's impractical and it would divide the country. That's his past stance. But on February 22nd, he was on a podcast with Bruce Springsteen, where Mr. Obama said this. Go.
So if you ask me, theoretically, are reparations justified? The answer is yes. There's not much question, right? That the wealth of this country, the power of this country, was built in significant part, not exclusively, maybe not even the majority of it, but a large portion of it was built on the backs of slaves. What I saw during my presidency was that the politics of white resistance and resentment, the talk of welfare queens and the talk of the undeserving poor and the backlash against affirmative action, all that made the prospect of actually proposing any kind of coherent, meaningful reparations program struck me as politically not only a non-starter, but potentially counterproductive.
All right, so Mr. Obama is right and he's wrong. It's certainly counterproductive because it would divide the country along racial lines. But he's wrong about slavery being the engine driver for the modern American economy. That's not true. And it's not even close to being true. So rather than give you a history lesson, I'm not going to do that. I will tell you that the northern part of America in the 19th century drove the economic engine. The manufacturing drove it. It was there where the big money was made. The agrarian South, where slavery was obviously used to enrich certain landowners, white landowners in the South, yes, that had an impact on the American economy, but not a huge impact. Overall, it enriched local people in the South. All right? So that's just historical truth. So to try to sell a program of reparations where African American families would receive cash payments from all American taxpayers is not built on any kind of logical history. And plus, it's unfair. It's unfair. So in order to free the slaves, the Civil War had to be fought. And millions of white Americans were affected directly because their ancestors were killed. And those families were deprived of the primary wage earner going forward because the primary wage earner was dead in a war to free the slaves. So they got hurt. They got hurt, the white families, because of the slavery conflict. Now, it is true that African Americans, black people in America, suffered more. Because once the Civil War was over, there was no rebuild among blacks. They were still persecuted in the South and in the North, where some of them migrated. They were persecuted. They were looked down upon. That's true. And anybody who denies that is not being honest. But every single group in the world has been hurt because of injustice. So Asian Americans were exploited because their ancestors built the railroads and were paid nothing. They built the Transcontinental Railroad. It was Asians who did that. Native Americans, just read Killing Crazy Horse. I mean, come on. So every group, even if you're white, my people in County Cavan, Ireland, our land was seized by the British Crown, taken away. And then my ancestors, two twin 16-year-old boys, had to get on a coffin ship and come to Brooklyn from Western Ireland, Galway, with nothing. So my family, which had deep roots in Ireland and had assets, they were landowners. I went to the land 2 years ago that was seized by the British Crown. Seized. And almost every Irish person on the planet had the same story. Now, I'm not demanding reparations from London. I mean, I'm not doing that because it doesn't do any good. What this reparations does is send a message to all African Americans that you're entitled to special treatment now because of historical injustice. But you can't do that because the entitlement has to come from someone else by tax dollars. So Obama is right in it's counterproductive, but he's wrong in the history of it.